for our guide as we venture through the Harambe Wildlife Reserve. And as we're heading out, there are some things we do have to go over for your safety. Please remember to remain fully seated, keeping your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the truck at all times. But that is about cover it. We've already got our final all clear from the warden, so welcome to the Harambe Wildlife Reserve. Our first stop here is the Little Aturi Forest. Now, the forest is going to be home to some pretty shy and reclusive animals that tend to be very good at hiding, as they're all amazing camouflagers, and that's going to be their main defense mechanism from predators. Now, you've already seen there's a lot of trees and bushes throughout here that help them to blend in with their surroundings, and if you look in the bushes on your right-hand side here, this is an okapi. Now, many people assume that the okapi are related to zebras because of their beautiful black and white striped legs, but they're actually the only known relative of the giraffe. And we know that because of the shapes of their skulls and their really long prehensile tongues. And prehensile is just a very fancy scientific word that means finger-like, so they can use their tongues as an appendage to grasp and pull leaves off the trees here in the forest. Now, if you look up at the top, they'll come up on your right-hand side here. These very large black and white birds are the saddle-billed storks. And they get their name from the saddle shape on their bill, and they can stand up to about 5 feet tall with wingspans of about 9 feet in length. Now, the male's got brown eyes and the female's got bright yellow eyes, and those two are a mated pair. And way back on the left-hand side, that is the black rhinoceros. Now, the black rhino is actually the smaller of the two species that live here on the reserve, but they still weigh up to about 3,000 pounds. But they could be considered small for a rhino. They have a triangular shaped top lip, which is also that prehensile that we were talking about with the okapi's tongue. So it's very muscular. That's going to help them to eat here in the forest. And their mouth shape is also one of the main differences between them and other rhino species. Another one right up here on the hill on your left-hand side. Also here on your left-hand side, this lighter gray antelope is a greater kudu. And if you look up at the top of the hill there, those are the bongos. Now, only the male greater kudu have horns on their head, whereas both male and female bongos are going to have horns. But those are female bongos up there. Males are a little bit larger and a little bit darker in coloration. And this is also the female greater kudu, because she doesn't have horns on her head. Now, the white stripes on their back do help them to camouflage by mimicking the sunlight beneath the trees. But with that, we're going to be making our way into the Safi River Valley, and here in this region, we're going to find some more aquatic animals, but also a few land animals that still like to hang out in and around the water as well. So we'll see what we have luck with throughout here. It looks like down the right-hand side there's going to be a pod of pink-backed pelicans, and that pink coloration in their name becomes a lot more vibrant during their mating season. And they've also got around a 7 to 9 foot wingspan. And yes, there's also a Nile hippopotamus down in the water there. See if you can find a few more of them as well. But hippos spend the majority of their life in the water. They can hold their breath for several minutes before they come up for air. Here we go. Over on your left-hand side, there's a whole boat of hippos. Now, it is kind of funny. For an animal that spends most of their time in the water, normally you won't see hippos swimming. Instead, they like to walk or run along the bottoms of the rivers, and that's because they're pretty dense. They weigh upwards of about 5,500 pounds, so it uses a lot less energy to just sink down to the bottom and walk rather than try to swim. But hippos are herbivores, meaning they only eat grasses and plants, so every once in a while you might see them come out of the water to graze off the riverbanks. But despite being herbivores, they do have very large teeth. Their incisors can grow to be about 18 inches long. And then as we head over this bridge hanging out down below us, there are a couple of Nile crocodiles. So we're going to go poly-poly very slowly over the bridge. Now, the Nile crocodiles are the largest crocodilian species in Africa. Please make sure you're sitting down for me. Thank you. They can grow to be about 16 feet long, weighing about 500 pounds. And if you kept a close eye on them, you probably notice they are staying very still down there. They might look like statues, but I promise you they are very real. They're just staying super still because that helps them to conserve their energy and allows them to go about 7 days without eating. But as you could probably imagine, 7 days will work up a very large appetite, so much so that in a single sitting, they could consume about half their body's weight worth of food. And again, they can weigh up to about 500 pounds, so pretty impressive. But as we're traveling throughout here, you're going to notice some of those trees and greenery starting to thin out, and that's because we're making our way into the savannah. And on your right-hand side is a very important part of the savanna ecosystem. This is a baobab tree. And you probably heard the baobab tree referred to as the tree of life. That is a pretty famous nickname it was given due to its incredible ability to hold thousands of gallons of water. And it does have our remaining leafless for about 9 months of the year. And that's going to make it a great water source for all of the animals out here on the Savannah to tap into, especially during their frequent drought periods. The Savannah is also known as the grasslands, and it's going to be home to some of the most famous animals on the reserve, like giraffes, elephants, and lions. So hopefully you're all excited, and hopefully we'll have some pretty good luck out here. Now, I will say that unlike back in the forest where we had mentioned a lot of the animals use camouflage, the animals out here on the Savannah definitely more rely on speed and agility to help evade predators. Others will also hang out in very large groups, and they rely on strength in numbers. So we'll see a couple of great examples of that throughout here. But it looks like down your left-hand side here, these are the African painted dogs. And they've all got their own unique set of spots, which helps them to identify each other out in the wild, even over long distances. And I'm sure we can all agree that they're very, very cute, but please don't underestimate them because they're also Africa's most successful hunters. They hunt as a pack and in a tag team effort. They will take turns chasing down their prey until their prey is exhausted. These structures that we're passing by here are called termite mounds. They're mainly made up of termite spit, dung, and dirt, and in the sun they can harden to be about as hard as concrete. So a lot of the animals out here like to use these as scratching posts, so a pretty important role in this ecosystem. But it looks like there are some more animals in this field just up ahead of us, so we'll make our way over towards them. By some of the Ankole cattle, and they've got some pretty impressive horns on their head. Their horns can be about 6 feet long from tip to tip, but they are hollow on the inside. They have sort of a honeycomb-like structure, which aids in blood circulation and helps them to cool off. So they're pretty lightweight and very beneficial for them. So blood's going to flow up into those horns to cool down, and then it travels back into their bodies, which is going to lower their internal body temperatures. Very important to stay cool in this Savannah. Now, the Ankole cattle are also known as the Watusi cattle, and that's because they were first discovered and domesticated by the Watusi tribe over 2,000 years ago. And they did serve as an important symbol of wealth among members of the tribe. So the more you had, the wealthier you were seen to be. And also over on your right-hand side are some of the wildebeests. And out in the wild, wildebeests are known to travel in groups as large as hundreds of thousands of individuals at a single time while they make their great migration, during which they'll travel anywhere from about 500 to 1,000 miles, usually just in search of a better food or water source. But it looks like in these trees on your left-hand side, we are finally approaching the Maasai giraffes, who can grow to be about 18 to 20 feet tall, making them the tallest land animals in the world. And giraffes typically eat for about 16 to 20 hours a day, so a lot of travel time. They've only got about 30 minutes left for sleep, and they'll split that up into about 2 to 5 minute intervals throughout the day. Hey folks, please make sure those little ones are sitting all the way down too. Thank you. I normally see giraffes doing most, if not all, the daily activities standing up, including sleeping, because that's the least vulnerable position for them. So they only lay down if they're really tired or if they're in an area where they're comfortable to do so, like on a protected reserve like this one. And a group of them is called a tower. Now, those very large tannish brown antelopes there are the elands, and the elands are the largest antelope species that live here on the reserve. They can stand up to about 6 feet tall at the shoulder. But on their necks, they have an extra piece of skin that's going to aid in blood circulation and help them to cool off as well, just like the Ankole cattle's horns. That extra piece of skin is called a dewlap. So, a lot of the animals out here also have some really cool features that help them to cool off, just like you and I sweat when our bodies get too hot. But as we head down this hill, you're going to look over on your left-hand side. We are approaching an African elephant here. African elephants are really easy to identify. You just take a look at the shape of his ears. They very closely resemble the shape of the continent of Africa, which is pretty convenient. And they flap their massive ears against their body because there are a lot of blood vessels in those ears, so that helps them to cool off, and they can bring their body temperatures down by about 15 degrees just by doing that. And the this is an adult male elephant here. They can grow to be about 13,000 pounds. And males are also a lot more solitary and territorial than the females are, so normally you'll see them hanging out by themselves. And coming up in this next watering hole are the greater flamingos. That greater in front of their name does not mean that they're better than any of the species, just larger than. And they've also got the lightest shade of pink feathers of any of the flamingos. But that iconic pink coloration does come from their diets. They eat a lot of brine shrimp, which is rich in beta-carotene, and that's a protein that gives them that coloration. But their babies hatch with gray feathers, and it will take them several years to get that full pink coloration. So if you look among the group here, you might find some of them that still have really light feathers, or they still have grayish legs there. Some of them just hatched a couple months ago. But a group of flamingos has a pretty fun name. They're called a flamboyance. As we cross over into the eastern Savannah, it looks like there's a little bit of rocky terrain up ahead of us there, which is a great sign that we are entering big cat territory. Here to our left-hand side, there is a cheetah laying down right in the center of this clearing here, straight out from us. And cheetahs are the fastest land animals. They can go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 3 seconds, but they can only maintain those top speeds for just a few hundred yards before they have to slow back down again. But they're not just masters of speed, they're also masters of camouflage. Cheetahs can camouflage very well, especially during the day, which is why they're one of the only cat species that will hunt during the day. And they also have those black teardrop marks underneath their eyes, which help absorb sunlight and protect their eyes from the glare of the sun. So they're very well equipped to hunt during the day. And a group of cheetahs is called a coalition, and they're not actually part of the big cat family just because they're a little bit too small and they don't have the ability to roar, which is kind of the main qualifying factor to make them a big cat. Instead, cheetahs communicate their series of chirps, purrs, and meows, kind of like a house cat. But this rock formation is called a Kobe rock, and oftentimes you'll find a much larger nocturnal cat species, the lions, hanging out here. Let's see if we have any luck with them. Now, being nocturnal means they sleep and rest around 16 to 20 hours a day. But that's not out of laziness. They do that to conserve their energy, and then at night, the females are going to be the ones who go out and do all the hunting, while the male stays at home to watch over the territory and protects the pride, which is what we call a group of lions. They are most active very early on in the morning or later on in the evening. Seems like he's still a little bit tired right now, though. But if you've ever been lucky enough to hear it, a lion's roar can be heard for up to 5 miles, which is how they communicate with each other, and also how they let everybody know whose territory they're walking on. But they are becoming a bit of a rare sight to come upon. It's estimated that in just the last 25 years, we've lost over half the lion population. They're facing a lot of habitat loss and poaching threats. But the Disney Conservation Fund started a project called Protect the Pride to try and bring those numbers back up. And you can donate to that conservation fund at any merchandise location in all of Animal Kingdom. Then Disney will match the donation at dollar for dollar, penny for penny. And they support conservation efforts all around the world. Over on your right-hand side here, laying down right by this cluster of trees is one of the water buck. It's another antelope species. That's a female. Only the males have horns on their head. But they got the name water buck because they can drink several gallons of water a day, which is a lot for an antelope. They love hanging out around the water. They're non-migratory animals, so once they find a great home with a great source of water, they won't leave unless they're forced to. And they also produce an oil on their fur, which essentially makes their fur waterproof. And if you look down on your right-hand side here, there's a big cluster of ostrich eggs. No, we didn't see the ostriches, but this is a great sign of their presence on the reserve. Those are the largest bird eggs, which makes sense because the ostrich is the largest flightless bird species, but you could actually stand on top of one of those eggs without cracking them. They're going to weigh in at about 3 pounds each, and that's equivalent to about 2 dozen chicken eggs. Glen as we are moving towards civilization and away from the wildlife out there. And here we're going to see a great example as to how humans and animals can coexist and live in harmony. At the Warden's Post, there's a group of Nigerian dwarf goats. They are really amazing animals. They make great natural lawn mowers, and they produce a lot of milk that the Warden can use to make cheese products, and then they can sell goat milk and goat cheese in the local village. And it is a lot more environmentally friendly to get these products from them rather than cows. But they're also incredibly playful animals. They love to run, jump, climb, and headbutt. And the most dominant male of their group is actually going to be established by which one of them is the most playful.
I like it.
But the Warden's Post does lie on the edge of the reserve, so sadly this means our safari is going to be coming to an end here as we are approaching the outskirts of the village. But I know we've seen some really amazing animals out there, and I do hope you guys would agree with that. But they sure are a lot of animals that we don't really get to see every single day, and some of them might seem kind of intimidating. But it's still very important to keep in mind that the biggest threat to every animal we saw is unfortunately us as humans. But that's definitely not all bad news, because we all have the opportunity and the power to help out those animals as well. And a great way that we can do that is simply by remembering to reduce, reuse, and recycle, as that old saying can go a very long way and be a big step towards saving our planet and these animals' homes. So you can do very simple things every day, like turning off the faucet while you brush your teeth to reduce the amount of water that you use. You can also buy reusable products like reusable water bottles, but also something as simple as recycling right every single day. These are all really great ways that we can help out and have an impact. And we also mentioned the Disney Conservation Fund, and since we are here at Disney's Animal Kingdom, we always like to remind people that Walt Disney himself was a big conservationist. And he just said that conservation is not just the business of a few people, but is a matter that concerns us all. But an incredibly simple way that we can help out is just by learning about these animals and talking about them. So you'll be participating in conservation is by being here on my truck today. So a very big thank you to you guys for being here. Now, if you have any questions, my windows up here are, of course, always open if you want to come on up and say hi before you leave. And if anybody on board Disney World is Explorer, you've been traveling on the Simba one today. That's Simba like the lion and one because you are number one.
We gotta wait.
But we also say out here on the Harambe Wildlife Reserve that what you see with your eyes, you value with your heart. So hopefully everybody will leave here with a little bit of a newfound appreciation for all those animals out there. You know, we mentioned how we are their biggest threat, but we're also their biggest hope. So you can go home, do one little thing every single day that might make a little bit of a difference. And if every single one of you does that and you tell your family and friends about it, then we all start doing it. Lead to a really big impact. So we're having a little bit of backup here, getting some trucks unloaded with gas, but hopefully it won't be too much longer now, so you guys can head out on your next adventure, whatever that might be for the evening.
Why are you looking at me like that? Look at him.
Park's gonna be closing up here in just a couple of minutes, so. But also while we're hanging out here, please check your rows, look on the seat, look on the ground, make sure to fill out of your pockets. We really don't want you to leave anything behind. Did anybody see their favorite animal while we were out there? Anybody? What'd you see? What's your favorite animal? A cheetah? That's a good one. That's a good one. We got a really cool view of the lions as well. And the elephant that we saw, again, he's the oldest and biggest elephant that lives here. So we got really lucky to see him. Back up, they're waiting to send out the last safari of the evening, but I'm seeing a little bit of movement up there. Now, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about any of the animals that we saw out there on the reserve today, there's a really amazing show on Disney Plus. It's called The Magic of Disney's Animal Kingdom. That is where you can get a lot of the behind-the-scenes information, a lot about here at Kilimanjaro Safaris. So you can see how the amazing team that works out there on the reserve, they're called animal programs. You can see how they work with all of those animals. And they all work one-on-one with them. They form really cool relationships with them. Each of those animals has their own name and their own personality. So you learn a lot of their names, you learn a lot about their diets, things like that. And you can also see the vet team interacting with a lot of the animals, even see them performing procedures on a lot of the animals, so you can see how they get taken care of in that aspect. And that show's going to cover both here at Disney's Animal Kingdom, over at the Animal Kingdom Lodge, and the Sage, which is the aquarium over at Epcot. And there's 2 seasons available on Disney Plus right now. The first one's actually narrated by Josh Gad, which some of you might know as Olaf. So it's really cool and entertaining. I do this all day, every day, and I go home and I still watch that show. So it's really funny. There's an entire episode called Giraffic Jam. It's really just about how the giraffes like to stand in the road out here at Kilimanjaro Safaris. So. Thank you guys so much for being patient. You are amazing. Really, really appreciate it.